The message arrived on a Tuesday. Dr. Ju Park was analyzing radio telescope data when the pattern emerged, unmistakably artificial and definitely not from Earth. She blinked twice, rubbed her tired eyes, and ran the sequence again. The same pattern appeared, pulsing with mathematical precision that nature simply couldn't produce. Dr. Kang, she called to her colleague without taking her eyes off the monitor. You need to see this. Dr. Doa Kang shuffled over, coffee mug in hand. His eyes widened as he watched the sequence repeat itself. Is that what I think it is? He whispered. Ju nodded slowly. Someone's trying to talk to us. Within 6 hours, every major observatory on Earth had confirmed the signal. Within 12, the first translation algorithms were running. By the next morning, the message was clear enough that emergency meetings were being called in capitals around the world. Ju found herself in New York 3 days later, sitting at a large oval table surrounded by military officers, politicians, and scientists from 24 countries. The room was tense with a mixture of fear and excitement. Let me be clear about what we've received, Ju said, standing to address the gathering. It's an invitation from something calling itself the Galactic Confederation. They're hosting what translates roughly as Interstellar Olympics, and they want Earth to participate. General Taho Kim, representing South Korea's military forces, leaned forward. They'd want us to compete. We've barely left our solar system. That's precisely why we should accept, Ju replied, adjusting her glasses. We'll learn more about them in competition than we would through a decade of diplomatic channels. The debate raged for hours. Some nations wanted nothing to do with unknown aliens. Others saw a chance to leap forward technologically. A few worried it might be a trap. What if they just want to study our weaknesses? Asked a Russian general. Then they'd learn more by simply observing us from afar, Ju countered. They've reached out. The question is whether we reach back. In the end, curiosity won out over caution. Earth would accept the invitation and send a delegation of 50 humans, scientists, engineers, and a few military personnel with scientific backgrounds. The next challenge was getting there. According to the coordinates provided, the Confederation's Olympic station orbited a star 17 light-years away. Earth's fastest spacecraft would take centuries to reach it. The invitation included some basic technical specifications, explained Hannah Lee, a propulsion engineer. They've provided enough information for us to modify our existing ships with a simplified version of their faster-than-light technology. Can we trust it? Someone asked. Hannah shrugged. The physics checks out. It's elegant, actually. We've been circling these principles for decades without the final pieces. They had 7 weeks to prepare. Teams around the world worked around the clock to retrofit 3 vessels with the alien drive systems. The selection committee reviewed thousands of applicants, finally settling on a team that represented Earth's diversity of knowledge and skills. Ju was named head of the scientific division. Her specialty in astrophysics made her valuable, but it was her clear thinking during the initial contact that earned her the position. I'm not a diplomat, she protested when offered the role. That's exactly why we want you, replied the UN Secretary General. You see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. The training program was intense. None of the chosen delegates had expected to be astronauts, let alone the first humans to meet alien life. They learned emergency protocols, basic spacecraft operations, and studied the limited information they had about the Confederation. According to the transmission, there are 27 member species, the xenobiology instructor explained. All have achieved faster-than-light travel, but some joined thousands of years ago, while others are relatively new. Earth would be the newest by far. 2 days before launch, Ju stood alone on the observation deck of the spaceport, watching technicians make final adjustments to their ships. The vessels looked crude, Earth's best technology, hastily merged with alien concepts they barely understood. Having doubts, asked Minho Ryu, the pilot assigned to Ju's ship. Wouldn't you? She replied. He smiled. Of course. But think about it. Humans have always dreamed of this moment. First contact. Proof we're not alone. And now we're not just meeting them. We're joining their games. Games will probably lose badly, Ju said. Probably. Minho agreed cheerfully. But we'll learn, and we'll come back next time better prepared. The launch itself was uneventful. The retrofitted engines worked exactly as the alien specifications had promised, creating a bubble of distorted spacetime that allowed the ships to move faster than light. The journey that should have taken centuries passed in just under 5 days. Their first view of the Olympic station left the human crew speechless. It was a massive structure, like a metallic coral reef floating in space, with ships of various sizes and shapes moving around it in complex patterns. "It's beautiful," whispered Ju as they approached. The docking procedure followed the instructions they'd been given. As their ships settled into designated bays, Ju noticed alien technicians watching from observation windows. Their body language, even across species, was easy to read. They were not impressed. When the airlock opened, Earth's delegation was met by a delegation of various alien species. At the front stood a blue-skinned being with 4 arms, wearing what appeared to be ornate ceremonial robes. "I am Ambassador Locks of the Confederation Welcome Committee," it said in a voice that seemed to echo inside their heads rather than through the air. "We are pleased that Earth has accepted our invitation." Ju stepped forward as planned. "We are honored to be included and eager to learn." Locks led them through corridors filled with species of all shapes and sizes. Some moved on multiple legs, others floated, and a few seemed to phase partially in and out of visibility. When they reached the main hangar where their ships were being examined, Ju noticed several alien engineers examining the human vessels with expressions that seemed to mix confusion and alarm. "Your propulsion system is interesting," remarked Ambassador Locks, gesturing toward the hybrid engines. "Most species upgrade before interstellar travel." Ju smiled, hiding her embarrassment at their clearly primitive technology. "We work with what we have." "Indeed," said Locks, blinking its 3 eyes in sequence. "The preliminaries begin tomorrow. Rest well. You will need your strength." As Locks departed, Ju overheard one alien engineer speaking to another while pointing at their ships. The translator in her ear rendered it clearly. "They sent their people across the void in these. Either humans are incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." Ju wondered which was true. Perhaps both. Yunwoo Lee wiped sweat from his brow after finishing 6th in the low-gravity relay. Not terrible, but not impressive either. He floated to the recovery area where other competitors gathered, some using tentacles or specialized appendages to secure themselves to the station's handrails. "Not bad for your first time in low G," said Ju, handing him a water pouch. Hyunwoo took a long drink. 6th place out of 27 feels like losing when you're representing all of humanity. The Confederation had organized the Olympics with hundreds of events spread across different environmental conditions. The low-gravity relay was one of the simplest, a race through a series of curved tunnels where competitors pushed off walls to propel themselves forward. "The humans are underwhelming," Commander Drek of the Krell Empire said loudly enough for the Earth team to hear. He stood nearly 7 feet tall with rough, gray skin that resembled stone and eyes that glowed amber. "They send unenhanced bodies to compete against evolved species. It's almost insulting." 2 Krell athletes standing beside him laughed, the sound like rocks grinding together. Ju placed a calming hand on Hyunwoo's shoulder. "Ignore them. We're here to learn." And learn they did. By the end of the first day, the human team had competed in 12 events, finishing in the middle or bottom tier for most. They gathered that evening in their assigned quarters to compare notes. "The Trilaxians have tentacles that split into smaller tentacles for fine manipulation," reported Minayun, who had competed in a precision assembly challenge. "The Voral can see ultraviolet and infrared," added Junokwan, who had finished last in a visual acuity test. Ju was recording everything, building a database of alien physiologies and capabilities. As the team described their experiences, she noticed a pattern. "What was your time in the second half of the relay compared to the first?" she asked Hyunwoo. He checked his results. "I was 12 seconds faster in the second half." "And you, Sunggo? How did your scores change in the reaction test?" Sunggo Kim brought up his data. "I improved by 8% between the first and last round." Ju smiled. "That's what I thought. Look at the other species' results." She displayed the compiled data on a screen. Almost every human competitor showed improvement over the course of their events. The alien competitors maintained consistent performance throughout. "We're adapting," she said. "They aren't." The next morning, the human team entered the competition area with renewed focus. They weren't going to win, but they could learn and improve. The strength assessment took place in a chamber with Earth standard gravity. Competitors had to lift increasingly heavy objects until they could no longer continue. Jae-song was Earth's representative. She was not an athlete, but a dock worker from Busan who had applied to the program on a whim. "You should have sent someone stronger," she had told the selection committee. "I just load cargo containers all day." "That's exactly why we want you," they had replied. "You represent normal human capability." Now she stood among aliens with enhanced musculature and exoskeletons. The Krell competitor looked like a walking mountain of muscle. A being from Nexus V had 4 powerful arms with hydraulic-looking joints. The test began with simple weights and progressed to oddly shaped objects that tested grip and balance, as well as strength. Jai watched carefully as others competed, noting their techniques. When her turn came, she approached calmly. The first few lifts were easy. By the mid-level weights, some competitors had already dropped out. Jai continued, her face showing strain but her form remaining solid. "The human is still in the competition," murmured one of the judges, a slender being with metallic skin. As the weights increased, Jai's technique changed. She used her legs more, adjusted her breathing, and repositioned her grip for maximum efficiency. What she lacked in raw power, she made up for in adaptability. Finally, only Jai and 3 others remained. The Krell, the 4-armed Nexan, and a bulky robot-like entity from a silicon-based world. The weight was now triple what Jai had ever lifted at the docks. She approached the oddly shaped mass, studied it briefly, then found handholds that gave her the best leverage. With a deep breath, she lifted. Her muscles trembled, her face turned red, but the weight came up. When she set it down, the judging panel leaned forward with interest. "Scan her," ordered one judge. A beam of light passed over Jai's body. "No mechanical enhancements detected," reported another judge. "No genetic modifications. No neural boosters." The Krell judge looked skeptical. "That's impossible. A baseline organic couldn't lift that weight without assistance." Jae-song laughed, still catching her breath. "This is just me. I work at a shipping dock back home." The alien officials exchanged troubled glances. Word spread quickly through the station. The human had placed third in a pure strength competition with no enhancements. It contradicted everything the Confederation understood about Earth's technological development. "They must be hiding something," Commander Drek insisted during a meeting of Krell officials. "Perhaps they have biological technology we cannot detect." In the Earth team's quarters, excitement was building. While they hadn't won any events outright, their performances were improving dramatically. Several humans had already beat their personal records, some by significant margins. "We're learning faster than they expected," Ju told the team. "Our bodies are adapting to these conditions in real time." "Is that unusual?" asked Minho. "From what I've observed, yes. The other species seemed surprised by our rapid improvement." The third day brought endurance events, long-distance races, extended concentration tests, and challenges that required competitors to withstand environmental stress. Jae-yun Park, a climate scientist from Seoul, represented Earth in the temperature adaptation test. Competitors entered chambers that slowly became hotter or colder, testing their ability to function in extreme conditions. The Trilaxians withdrew almost immediately as the temperature dropped, their tentacles becoming rigid. The Vorl excelled in cold, but faltered when the chamber heated up. Only Jai-Yun and a lizard-like Soren remained by the final round. "How are you still functioning?" the Soren asked through its translator as they endured heat that would cause heat stroke in minutes for most humans. "I'm not comfortable," Jai-Yun replied honestly, "but I can adapt." When the test ended in a tie, the judges again scanned Jai-Yun for enhancements. Finding none, they added another note to the growing file on human physiology. That evening, Ju was summoned to meet with the Confederation's Scientific Council. She found herself in a circular room with representatives from 12 different species. "Your team's performance has raised questions," said the head counselor, a being with translucent skin through which complex organs could be seen pulsing. "We understood Earth to be a pre-galactic civilization with minimal technological development." "That's correct," Ju replied. "Yet your people compete at levels that some established species cannot match, despite having no evident enhancements." Ju nodded. "We evolved on a world with high gravity, atmospheric toxins, radiation, extreme temperature variations, and thousands of predators. Our bodies had to become adaptable to survive." The council members exchanged glances that Ju couldn't interpret. "Most sentient species evolve in protected environments," said one counselor. "Stable temperatures, minimal radiation, few predators. Earth sounds." The translucent counselor paused. "Challenging." As Ju returned to the human quarters, she passed Commander Drek in the corridor. The Krell stopped, towering over her. "Your people hide their true nature," he rumbled. "The Krell Empire will be watching." Ju looked up at him calmly. "We hide nothing, Commander. We're just getting started." Ju stepped into the laboratory where Dr. Vel had asked to meet her. The room was filled with strange equipment and holographic displays showing what appeared to be human anatomical data. Dr. Vel himself was a tall, thin being with pale blue skin and six-fingered hands currently manipulating the 3D image of human muscle tissue. "You wanted to see me?" Ju asked. Dr. Vel turned, his large eyes blinking vertically instead of horizontally. "Yes. Thank you for coming. I have many questions about your species." Ju nodded. "I'll help if I can, though I'm an astrophysicist, not a biologist." "Your species is perplexing," said Dr. Vel, the Confederation's chief xenobiologist. He gestured to the displays surrounding them. "You developed on a high-radiation, high-gravity world with extreme climate variations and dangerous wildlife." "Earth isn't so bad," replied Ju with a small smile. "We call it home." "You don't understand," Vel insisted, moving to another display showing Earth's environmental data compared to other worlds. "Most sentient species evolved in protected environments. Your natural resilience exceeds many of our engineered adaptations." Ju looked at the data more carefully. She had never considered Earth particularly harsh. It was just Earth. But seeing it compared to the homeworlds of other Confederation species, she began to understand Vel's surprise. "The Trilaxians evolved in calm, shallow oceans with no tides," Vel explained, pointing to one set of data. "The Vorl developed in caves shielded from all radiation. The Soren's planet has no seasonal variations at all." "And the Krell?" Ju asked, thinking of the imposing stone-like species. "They evolved on a high-gravity world like yours, but with a very stable climate and few predators. Their strength is impressive but specialized. Their adaptation abilities are minimal." Vel pulled up new displays showing human physical data collected during the competitions. "Your species can withstand radiation levels that would harm most Confederation members. You can survive temperature ranges that would kill others. Your bones break and heal stronger. Your immune systems attack unknown pathogens with remarkable efficiency." Vel's voice had taken on an almost reverent quality. "But most puzzling is your adaptability. Most species reach optimal performance quickly, but cannot improve beyond their limits. Humans start at lower performance but continuously improve through what you call training. This capacity is unusual. Jiwoo thought about the human athletes who pushed past pain, about mountain climbers who conquered higher peaks each year, about children learning to walk after being told they never would. We've always had to adapt, she said simply. Our history is full of challenges. Vel nodded. I believe this explains why your civilization developed differently than ours. While we focused on technological solutions to environmental problems, you evolved biological solutions. We have plenty of technology, Jiwoo pointed out. Yes, but it developed later in your history. Most Confederation species created climate control before developing writing. You humans lived in deserts and Arctic regions with minimal technological assistance. Vel showed her one final display, a comparative analysis of brain activity across species. Your neuroplasticity is extraordinary. Your brains physically rewire themselves in response to new challenges. The competitors from your world are adapting to our environment in real time. Jiwoo felt a mix of pride and concern. The way Vel was talking about humans almost sounded like they were some kind of super species, which was absurd. They had only just achieved interstellar travel, and that was with help. Dr. Vel, I think you're overestimating. An alarm sounded, interrupting her. Vel checked a notification that appeared in midair. The council has called an emergency session, he said. Your presence is requested. What's happened? The Krell delegation has filed a formal complaint against Earth. When they arrived at the council chamber, it was in chaos. Representatives from 24 species were talking over each other, while the council members tried to restore order. Commander Drek stood at the center, his voice booming above the others. The evidence is clear. They have infiltrated our Olympic Games with militarized bodies. Jiwoo and Vel entered just as the head counselor, the translucent being named Thorak, managed to quiet the room. Commander Drek has filed a complaint accusing the Earth delegation of concealing enhanced biological capabilities, Thorak explained. Dr. Jiwoo Park, as Earth's scientific representative, you must address these concerns. All eyes in the room turned to Jiwoo. She felt the weight of not just the accusation, but of representing her entire planet in this moment. What exactly are we accused of? She asked calmly. Drek stepped forward, his amber eyes fixed on her. Your athletes show impossible improvements. Your bodies contain redundant systems, with no purpose except survival in combat conditions. Your woman Jihai lifted weights that should have broken her bones. Your man Hyunwoo improved his reaction time beyond biological limits. He pointed a rocky finger at her. You have concealed biological weaponry within your bodies. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Jiwoo waited until they subsided. We're not hiding anything, Jiwoo explained to the council, keeping her voice steady and clear. We simply haven't had reason to push our limits yet. Explain, demanded Thorak. Earth has higher gravity than most of your worlds. Our atmosphere contains oxygen levels that would be toxic to some of you. Our planet is bombarded by radiation from our sun daily. We evolved to survive these conditions. She looked around the room, making eye contact with various representatives. We don't have redundant systems. We have necessary systems. Our bones break and heal stronger because we need them to. Our skin burns in the sun and then darkens to protect us. Our lungs expand with exercise because they must. Dr. Vel stepped forward. I have studied the human's physiology. There are no artificial enhancements, no hidden weapons. They are simply the product of an unusually challenging evolutionary environment. Commander Drek was not satisfied. If what you say is true, your species represents a natural biological threat to the order of the Confederation. This caused another outbreak of concerned murmurs. Jiwoo raised her voice to be heard. We came here in peace to learn and connect with other intelligent life. We have no desire for conflict. Yet your capabilities suggest you were designed for it, countered Drek. Not designed, corrected Jiwoo. Shaped by Earth itself. An elegant being with feathered skin that Jiwoo recognized as Ambassador Trill of the Avians rose to speak. I have observed the humans closely, Trill said. They show no aggression beyond normal competitive spirit. Their physical abilities, while surprising, are not threatening in themselves. Thank you, Ambassador, said Juwu. However, Trill continued, I share Commander Drek's concern about what this means for future relations. If ordinary humans possess such resilience, what might Earth develop if they focused on maximizing these traits? The chamber fell silent as the implications set in. Thorak spoke after a moment of consideration. Dr. Park, would you be willing to submit your team to additional testing to verify there are no artificial enhancements? Of course, Ju replied. We have nothing to hide. And would you consent to sharing more detailed information about Earth's environmental conditions and human evolutionary history? Ju nodded. That seems reasonable. Then this matter will be investigated properly before further accusations are made, Thorak decided. Commander Drek, your concerns are noted, but we require evidence before taking action. Drek growled something in his native language that the translators didn't catch, but his displeasure was obvious. As the session ended, Dr. Vell approached Juwu. This is unprecedented, he said quietly. No new species has ever caused such concern simply by participating. We didn't mean to upset anyone, Juwu replied. We're just being ourselves. That, said Vell, is precisely what worries them. If this is humanity at rest, they wonder what humanity in motion might accomplish. That evening, Juwu gathered the Earth team to explain the situation. They listened with growing concern as she described the complaint and the Council's response. They think we're some kind of super soldiers, Hanmu asked incredulously. I came in sixth. It's not about winning, Juwu explained. It's about our potential. They can see what we can't, that humans are unusually adaptable by galactic standards. Ji shook her head. I'm just a dock worker. There's nothing special about me. By Earth standards, perhaps, said Juwu. But here, the fact that you can lift those weights without technology, that your body improves with practice instead of breaking down, it's revolutionary. The team fell silent, absorbing this new perspective on themselves and their species. Finally, Minho spoke up. So what do we do now? Juwu looked around at her fellow humans, ordinary people who had suddenly become extraordinary simply by being human in a place where humanity was unique. We keep competing, she said firmly. We show them that our strength doesn't make us dangerous, and we prepare for what comes next, because I think the final events are going to be designed specifically to test our limits. The announcement came 3 days after the council meeting. A special event had been added to the Olympic schedule, a survival challenge on Proxima's moon. It wasn't technically a moon, but a small planetoid orbiting a gas giant in a nearby system. The surface conditions were described as varied and extreme. This is clearly designed to test us specifically, said Juwu as she briefed the Earth team. The conditions match almost exactly what Dr. Vell described as Earth's unusual environmental factors. The team studied the briefing materials. Proxima's moon had areas of high radiation, extreme temperature variations between day and night, toxic atmospheric components, and uneven gravity due to dense mineral deposits. Competitors would need to navigate a course across its surface, reaching checkpoints while managing these hazards. They want to see our limits, said Minjin Kang, a former search and rescue worker who had been selected for the challenge. Fine. Let's show them. The Earth team had 5 days to prepare. While other delegations received specialized equipment from their homeworlds, the humans had to work with what they had brought or could build from available materials. We can't match their technology, Juwu told the team. So we'll focus on adaptability instead. They modified standard environmental suits with extra insulation layers. They practiced breathing techniques for low oxygen conditions. They studied maps of the course and planned energy conservation strategies. On the day of the event, teams from 18 species gathered in the transfer bay. The contrast was striking. The Krell competitors wore massive exoskeletons with built-in atmospheric processors. The Voral had sleek suits that seemed to bend light around them. The Trilaxians floated in personal containment spheres filled with their native liquid. The human team looked primitive by comparison. Their suits were bulky in some places, minimal in others. Their breathing apparatus resembled modified diving equipment. Their boots were standard issue with extra padding. Commander Drek approached as the Earth team made final adjustments. "This is suicide," he muttered as he watched Minjin Kang adjust his simple oxygen mask. "Your primitive equipment won't last 5 hours in those conditions." Minjin looked up at the towering Krell. "We'll manage. Withdraw now and save yourselves the suffering," Drek said, almost sounding concerned. "This challenge was created to expose your limits. Then it will be educational for everyone," replied Minjin calmly. The competitors were transported to Proxima's moon in groups. The humans went in the final shuttle, giving them time to observe the others' departures. Juwu noticed something interesting. "They're all approaching this as a technological challenge," she said. "Look at their equipment. It's designed to counteract the environment completely." "Isn't that the point?" asked Sunghoon Park, another team member. "Maybe," said Juwu. "But what happens when technology fails?" They soon found out. The surface of Proxima's moon was even more hostile than described. They stepped out onto gray-green soil under a sky dominated by the massive gas giant. The air was thin and smelled of sulfur even through their filters. The temperature read -15 degrees Celsius, but would rise to +40 degrees Celsius at peak day. "First checkpoint is 8 kilometers northeast," said Yuma Choi, checking her navigation device. "Gravity increases as we approach. Radiation levels highest at midpoint." The humans moved out in a tight group, conserving energy with efficient movement. They passed a Trilaxian whose containment sphere was already showing cracks from an unexpected gravity shift. 2 technicians were attempting repairs while the Trilaxian's tentacles writhed anxiously inside. By the 6th hour, they reached the first major radiation zone. Their detectors showed levels that would cause sickness with prolonged exposure. The team adjusted their course to minimize time in the hotspot. "The Voral team went straight through," observed Minjin, pointing to tracks in the soil. "Their suits must block all radiation." 3 hours later, they found the Voral team huddled behind a rock formation. Their light-bending suits had failed, circuits fried by a combination of radiation and temperature fluctuations they hadn't anticipated. "Do you require assistance?" Sunghoon asked them. The Voral leader shook his head. "We are withdrawing. Our secondary systems will sustain us until extraction." The humans continued. As darkness fell, the temperature plummeted rapidly. Their suits' heating elements worked overtime, draining power faster than expected. They adjusted by clustering together during rest periods, sharing body heat. Morning brought new challenges. The rising sun heated the surface quickly, turning frozen ground into steaming mud that released toxic gases. The humans reduced their exertion, controlled their breathing, and kept moving while other competitors stopped to repair or adjust their equipment. 20 hours into the challenge, alien competitors began withdrawing in large numbers. Their technology failed under combined stresses, or their bodies collapsed despite enhancements. A Soren team passed the humans heading in the opposite direction, their normally scaly skin blistered from unexpected chemical exposure. "How are you still functioning?" one Soren asked in amazement. "We expected it to be difficult," replied Yuna simply. The humans kept going. Sunghoon Park developed blisters that bled through his boots but continued walking. Yuma Choi suffered oxygen deprivation, but adapted her breathing pattern and pressed forward. Minjin Kang's left hand was burned when his glove tore, but he wrapped it in emergency sealant and refused to stop. From the observation deck on a station orbiting the moon, Commander Drek watched with widening eyes. Beside him, Dr. Vell monitored the human team's vital signs. Their core temperatures should be dangerously elevated in those conditions, Drek said, pointing to a readout. Yet they maintain function. "They're sweating," explained Vell, "releasing heat through moisture on their skin. Most species can't do this efficiently. And their oxygen levels, low but stable, they've slowed their breathing and heart rates consciously. Drek shook his massive head. Without technology, impossible. For most species, yes, agreed Vel. But humans evolved doing exactly this, adapting their behavior to survive changing conditions. On the surface, the human team reached the halfway point. Of the 18 species that started, only 7 remained in the challenge. The humans were in third position behind a Krell team and a group of machine-based organisms who were naturally suited to extreme conditions. The second half of the course took them through a valley where gravity shifted unpredictably due to dense mineral deposits. The machine organisms struggled, their metal components suddenly weighing twice normal in some patches. The humans felt the strain but adjusted their movements, sometimes crawling, sometimes using momentum to pass through high-gravity zones. At hour 30, they found the lead Krell team stopped near a narrow pass. Their exoskeletons had shut down after a power surge caused by atmospheric electrical activity. The massive suits were now more hindrance than help, weighing them down. "We can help you remove the suits," offered Minjin, "and expose ourselves to these conditions." "Impossible," replied the Krell leader. "Sometimes less is more," said Minjin, but the Krell had already called for extraction. The human team was now in second place behind the machine organisms. As they approached the final checkpoint, a dust storm arose, filling the air with abrasive particles. The machine's joints began to seize as dust infiltrated their systems. The humans pulled goggles and masks tight, lowered their heads, and pressed forward into the storm. They couldn't see more than a few meters ahead, but they maintained direction by feel and instinct more than instruments. When they finally emerged from the storm, they were alone on the course. The extraction point lay just 2 kilometers ahead. "We might actually win this," said Sungmoon in disbelief. They crossed the finish line 42 hours after starting, the only organic team to complete the course. The machine organisms arrived 3 hours later, their systems badly damaged by the storm. As they were transported back to the station, exhausted but triumphant, Jiwoo met them in the medical bay. "The Confederation is in an uproar," she told them with a smile. "No one expected you to finish, let alone in first place among organics." "We just kept going," said Yuna simply, "one step at a time." "That's what they don't understand," replied Jiwoo. "That's what makes humans different." Later, as the team recovered, Dr. Vel visited them with data from their vital signs during the challenge. "You should have failed at multiple points," he said, showing them readouts. "Your oxygen saturation dropped to levels that would incapacitate most species. Your core temperatures fluctuated beyond normal parameters. Your exposure to radiation exceeded safety limits." "Yet here we are," said Minjin. "Yes," said Vel thoughtfully. "Here you are, and now the Confederation must decide what that means for all of us." The Confederation Olympic Games concluded with a grand ceremony on the central platform of the space station. Representatives from all 27 member species gathered in their formal attire, creating a display of colors, textures, and forms unlike anything humans had ever witnessed. When the final scores were tallied, humans had claimed 3 of the top 10 positions. Not dominant, but remarkable for first-time participants using minimal technology. The survival challenge on Proxima's moon had elevated Earth's standing significantly, with Minjin Kang's team winning first place among organic competitors. Jiwoo stood with the Earth delegation, watching as medals were distributed. The human winners looked out of place among the alien champions, while other species wore ornate ceremonial gear or displayed biological enhancements proudly. The humans appeared ordinary, tired, bandaged in places, but smiling. "They still don't understand what they've accomplished," Dr. Vel said, appearing beside Jiwoo. "Your people seem almost embarrassed by their success." "It's not our way to boast," Jiwoo replied, "and they truly don't see themselves as exceptional." "That is perhaps the most exceptional thing about them," said Vel. After the awards, delegates mingled in what humans might recognize as a reception. Food and drink from dozens of worlds were available, though the human team had learned to be cautious about alien refreshments. Some contained compounds that were mildly toxic to Earth biology. Jiwoo was sampling a safe beverage when she felt a presence behind her. She turned to find Commander Drek towering over her, his stone-like features arranged in what might have been an attempt at a diplomatic expression. "Dr. Park," he said with a formal nod. "Commander," she replied. "Congratulations on your species' strong showing in the technical events." Drek made a dismissive gesture with one massive hand. "Technology can be improved with time and resources. What your species demonstrated cannot be manufactured or purchased." He seemed to be struggling with what to say next, which Jiwoo found interesting. The Krell were not known for uncertainty. "Your performance was concerning," Drek told Jiwoo, his tone somewhere between respect and fear. "The Council is debating the implications even now." "We came in peace and competed fairly," Jiwoo said. "There's nothing to debate. You misunderstand. It is not what humans did that concerns us, but what you might do." Drek lowered his voice. "Your adaptability, your resilience, these qualities make for excellent warriors." Jiwoo almost laughed. "We're not warriors, Commander. We brought ordinary people. Not our soldiers, not our athletes, just volunteers." Drek's amber eyes widened slightly. "These were not your elite specimens." "No. Minjun is a search and rescue worker. Ji loads cargo ships. Hyamu teaches children. They're normal humans. And if you had sent your best." Jiwoo considered this. Earth did have Olympic athletes, special forces soldiers, extreme environment specialists. What might they have accomplished here? "We didn't think to," she said honestly. This was about making contact, not competition. Drek was silent for a long moment. Then he extended his hand in what must have been a studied human gesture. "The Krell Empire would be interested in establishing formal relations with Earth," he said. "We have much to learn from each other." As Jiwoo shook his massive hand, she realized this was significant. The Krell rarely sought alliances with newer species. Over the next few days, as the Earth delegation prepared for their journey home, similar approaches came from many Confederation members. The Trilaxians offered advanced propulsion technology in exchange for research on human cellular regeneration. The Vorl proposed a cultural exchange program. The machine organisms requested permission to study Earth's diverse ecosystems. The Confederation Council itself extended an invitation for Earth to become a provisional member, an honor never before granted to a species so new to interstellar travel. "They're courting us," Jiwoo told her team during their final meeting on the station. "Not because of our technology or resources, but because of what we are." "What exactly are we?" asked Sunghoon, who still seemed puzzled by all the attention. "Survivors," said Jiwoo simply. "In a galaxy where most intelligent life evolved in protective environments, we're the odd ones who thrived in harshness. That makes us valuable and potentially dangerous." The journey home was different from their arrival. Instead of 3 hastily retrofitted ships, they traveled in a Confederation diplomatic vessel equipped with comforts and technology beyond anything they had seen. Alien delegates accompanied them, eager to see Earth firsthand. As they approached their solar system, the human team gathered at the observation deck. Seeing Earth from a distance, a blue marble hanging in the blackness, gave them a new perspective on their home. "It doesn't look harsh from here," said Yuna softly. "It looks beautiful." "Both can be true," replied Jiwoo. When they landed, Earth's governments were waiting. The UN Secretary-General herself greeted the team, along with representatives from every major nation. The alien delegates were welcomed with ceremony and caution in equal measure. In private meetings that followed, Earth's leaders learned what their species had unintentionally revealed to the galaxy. They debated how to proceed with the numerous offers of alliance and exchange. "They're afraid of us," said one general bluntly during a secure briefing. "Not afraid," Jiwoo corrected. "Respectful. There's a difference." "Can we trust them?" asked the Secretary-General. "Trust must be earned on both sides," said Jiwoo. But yes, I believe most of their offers are genuine. They see value in what humans can do. The Confederation's scientific branch requested human DNA samples for research purposes, which Earth's governments politely declined. They accepted technology exchanges, but limited access to human biological data. Military alliances were discussed, but not immediately formed. Earth would proceed carefully into this new relationship with the galaxy, neither rushing nor withdrawing. 3 months after their return, Zhu completed her final report to the United Nations. She worked late into the night, trying to capture the significance of what they had learned and what it meant for humanity's future. In her conclusion, she wrote, "They aren't afraid of what we did. They're afraid of what we could do if we actually tried. For the first time in galactic history, they've encountered a species that evolved to thrive in conditions others consider unsurvivable. And they realize we've only just begun." After submitting the report, Zhu stepped outside her office into the cool night air. She looked up at the stars, knowing that beings on distant worlds were looking back, watching Earth with new interest. A notification chimed on her device. The UN Security Council had approved funding for a dedicated Olympic training facility. Earth would send its best to the next Games in 5 years. Not as a show of force, but as a demonstration of what humanity could achieve when they actually tried. The Trilaxian ambassador had asked her once, "What is humanity's greatest strength?" She had thought carefully before answering. "We fall down 7 times and stand up 8. He hadn't understood the saying then. He would soon. As dawn broke over Earth's horizon, ships were already under construction in orbit, built with a blend of human ingenuity and alien technology. Scientists were developing new theories based on Confederation knowledge. Cultural exchanges were being planned. Humanity was stepping onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors or subjects, but as survivors who had earned their place among the stars simply by being human. The end.